Hey guys, thank you so much for listening to Dharma Drops Podcast. I cannot thank you enough from the bottom of my heart for tuning in episode after episode. Last month, the downloads were way beyond anything I ever could have imagined. More people listened to Dharma Drops last month than ever before from all over the globe. I cannot thank you enough. It means so much to me that you are listening and that you are a part of this community. If you are listening to the podcast and you're enjoying it, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to Dharma Drops Podcast on whatever app you're listening to it on. Not only do you help me at this one-woman show running Dharma Drops Podcast when you review and rate the podcast, but it's also a really nice way to share what's happening with the show with others across the globe. Last but not least, if you haven't joined the Facebook community, be sure to do so. Go to Facebook and search for Dharma Drops community page, and there you'll find exclusive podcast interviews, live Q&As that are happening on Wednesdays at 9 a.m., free yoga classes, meditations, and more. Again, to join, just go to Facebook, search Dharma Drops, DHARMA Drops community page, and you can join there. Before we get started in the episode, I'd like to take a moment just to send a little love and encourage you to send a little love or energy or prayers, whatever it is that you'd like to offer to the people of the Bahamas after Hurricane Dorian's wrath. I had the fortunate experience of spending time on Grand Bahama Island this year, and it's just heartbreaking to see the damage. But this episode is about Bhakti Yoga, which is a reminder that love really is the answer. And though maybe we aren't there in the Bahamas to help, we can recognize that we are all one. And even though the Bahamas might seem far away or you might seem disconnected to it, this is a reminder that underneath all of this, we are all just one community of souls living together on this earth. So if you have a moment, just send the Bahamas some love and enjoy the episode. This is Dharma Drops with your host, Rebecca Warfield. This podcast is a little bit about yoga, a little bit about life, and a little bit about whatever. And just as a warning, this podcast is unscripted, so that means I might regret a few things that I say. But hey, maybe I'll say some pretty awesome stuff too. Remember, these are musings, not truths. Buckle up, giddy up, because here we go. Thank you. So look, it was National Dog Day yesterday, which is really random. Do you have a dog?
I do have a dog, and she's my guru. She is my teacher.
What type of dog do you have?
I have a toy apricot poodle, they said at the Humane Society. However, I think she might be a Maltipoo, because Maltese just want to cuddle all the time.
Maltipoos are super cute.
I know, and she's got this little teddy bear face. My friends call her the imaginary puppy because she's too cute to possibly be real.
That's really cute. Yeah. So what's her name?
Coco Bean. She's hashtag Coco across America. You can follow her on Instagram.
Okay, I want to. So Coco Bean and Hanky, my dog, should be friends.
Oh, what do you have?
He's a French Bulldog.
Oh my goodness. That would be pretty
cute.
Oh my gosh.
So, but yesterday, it was National Dog Day, and I'm driving down the road, and two dogs run in front of these cars and almost get hit. I catch one.
Oh no.
I know. The other one gets away, but I did find the owner, and I think he got both of his dogs.
Oh, good.
So the one dog I caught, the dog's really funny. It hopped in my car. It was really sweet dogs. And I get the dog back to the owner. I go, not even a block down the road again. Mm-hmm. 3 more dogs cross the road.
No!
Yes. What the hell is this? So then I get those dogs. So 5 dogs in the course of 5 minutes in less than 100 feet.
Oh my goodness. That's crazy.
So happy National Dog Day, everybody.
Right? They're just running amok. I
know. This is Dharma Drops Podcast with your host, Rebecca Warfield, and I'm here with my friend Johanna Beekman from Portland, Oregon, right?
Yeah.
And you're here in Wilmington, North Carolina. You're on tour, is that correct?
I am.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about what this tour is.
I am on a tour with yoga and Bhakti Yoga, which is the yoga of devotion. And it's your expression of devotion. And for me, my expression of devotion is vocalization and singing, because our voices are these beautiful instruments that are created for transformation, right? And a lot of us get shut down around the voice. And so what I do with my yoga, I'm a singing yoga teacher. which is this cool, weird niche that I kind of
So wait,
found.
when you say singing yoga teacher, do you teach asana?
I do teach asana as well, but I was introduced to Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of chanting, at a young age by Krishna Das and Ram Das, who are some pretty prominent chanters in America.
That's amazing. So how were you introduced to them at a young age? Because see, I love chanting, and I don't consider myself a Bhakti yoga, but I do dabble, a Bhakti yogi, but I do dabble in Bhakti.
Right.
But it wasn't until my 30s that I was introduced to this stuff.
Wow. Yeah.
So how did you find it at a young age?
Well, I was very fortunate. My family moved from the Midwest before I was born and raised me in the Unitarian Church.
Oh, we have a Unitarian Church here.
Yeah. So I was learning about all paths up the mountain lead to the same place. So I learned about some of the traditions of yoga along with Christian traditions, along with Buddhist traditions. And so I had the opportunity in that church to find a lot of traditions and find the pieces that worked for me. But that's a side story.
Sure.
My parents are spiritual practitioners themselves. And so when my mother was pregnant, they were at a retreat center that was like my home away from home, Brighton Bush Hot Springs. Ram Dass was there.
Oh, that's amazing. What a gift.
I know. So it was Halloween. I'm not going to tell you the year because I don't want to date myself too much right now.
1999.
99, definitely.
Look, I teach at UNC Wilmington. I teach at UNC Wilmington, and all my students were born in 2001 or 2002.
Oh my goodness, how crazy is
And
that?
the other day, I made a G.I. Joe reference because we were going over the syllabus, and I said, knowing's half the battle, G.I. Joe. And everyone looked at me with these blank faces. And I said, have you guys heard of G.I. Joe before?
No.
Nope.
Oh my
Never heard of it.
What's happening to this world?
It's called We're Getting Old.
I know. So anyway, undisclosed year, my mother was pregnant, and it's Halloween, so she's dressed as a pumpkin.
Yeah.
And this is a month before I'm born. And Ram Dass, this amazing teacher who's now getting quite old, he lives in Maui now, he put his hands on her belly and blessed her belly.
Oh.
And so,
Oh my gosh, I have chills running all through my body.
And actually, I just had the same chills.
Yeah.
And I've told this story a million times, but it was a profound impact before I was born. And then at 17 years old, I'd been a songwriter and singing since I came out of the womb singing, you know. And at 17, my father's a musician, and he was doing sound for Krishna Das and Ram Das. Krishna Das is a prominent chanter that brought a lot of these traditional chants to the West.
Ram
in the
Das
70s.
too?
And Krishna Das.
So look, I wonder.
So they did a retreat when I was 17 together, and I got to go to 2-week-long retreats.
Oh my gosh.
With Ram Dass over Skype and Krishna Das.
That's amazing.
Right
so I'm curious to know, my boyfriend's parents followed Ram Dass a lot, and they went to satsang and all sorts of stuff with him. I'm curious to know if his parents and yours ever crossed paths.
Ooh, that is interesting.
Yeah,
I would be
I wonder if our
it's
paths.
a small world.
It is, and I wonder if our paths have crossed in some sort of oblique, sidestepped way.
I would not be surprised.
Me either.
I'm getting goosebumps.
I know,
actually.
it's really weird.
Yeah, so there's power in these traditions.
Yes,
and we're here in the West, right? And a lot of us are not Indian,
right?
But I've learned that through these practices, I have my spiritual practice, my emotional body, everything has come into alignment in a different way. And so what I did with back to who I am and how this singing yoga teacher.
Oh yeah. Back to the point.
So there I am being blessed by Ram Dass at a young age, and then doing the songwriting, and I kept doing regular music, and I became a yoga teacher, and then I was hit by a drunk driver, and I was practicing really powerful asana.
All you're doing is giving me chills today.
Right. So I quit music. And then that happened when I just totally changed my Dharma path, so to speak. Dharma Drops is your podcast. So Dharma is that calling in life. You know, like that there's no choice. You're just led there.
Right.
And so at that moment, I returned to my practice of chanting. When my doctors were saying, hey, you can't use your body. You can't do asana practice, the physical poses of, yoga. You can't, what? I'm, under 30 years old. Like, my body is shooting neurological pains.
Right.
I have a migraine. What am I going to do? I start chanting on the inside. And then I start to chant in restorative yoga poses, which are a very gentle practice, as you know.
Yeah.
And I started getting better.
That's so amazing.
And I got better faster than the doctor said I would. And I started doing practices they didn't think I was going to do again.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So these combinations of these practices can be so powerful. And so like with that Unitarian upbringing, I think what I learned is everything is a melting pot. Everything comes together. It's all connected. There's no separation.
Right.
Between us and love, between us and God, between us and our spiritual practice. It's all one. Between you and me.
Mm-hmm. But it's the practice that lets us peel away the layers to find that,
and
right?
the integration of the pieces that work for our particular nervous systems.
Right. And what's really interesting to me sometimes is if I don't practice, how easy it is to forget.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
And like, spin off into a human that you don't even recognize. You're like, who's that person from when I was 10?
Angry, frustrated, anxious, the whole 9 yards. It's so easy for all the layers that you once peeled away, all that illusion, all that Maya, to just whoosh, veil right over again.
Exactly.
It's so amazing.
Yeah. It is powerful. Yeah, and in full disclosure, I had a morning kind of like that, where I got a message before I'd practiced that brought me out of my center.
Right. And I think a lot of people feel that the yogis of any kind just live in this state of union, right?
No, we're humans.
Very, very human. And so really for me, and I think for all yogis, I just don't know if everyone articulates it the same way, this is just the work to keep us in that space when we need it. Right? Because we do need it. Because we are human beings.
We are human beings and we are the divine.
Right.
And there's no separation. So we are human and we are fallible and we can have forgiveness there because we're also divine and we are spirit and we are capable of total transformation and total unconditional love. Just like the dogs that that you rescued in the street. You know, they didn't know any better and we have this symbiotic relationship. They need us. We need them.
I need my dog. He's so sweet.
And there's an oxytocin response that's happening with you and your dog that we're also receiving in an asana practice that's beneficial.
Right. So interesting. Also, too, because you talked about the Unitarian Church. I had a weird spiritual upbringing. I was raised Presbyterian, but I went to a Catholic school.
Oh, wow.
And so I was in trouble a lot in Catholic school for not being Catholic, which sounds kind of weird. But when everyone was at recess, I had to go in and say rosaries and pray for forgiveness for not being Catholic, very traditional Catholic sort of stuff. But in that upbringing, God or spirit or universe, whatever you want to call it, often the word God doesn't resonate with me. I think because of Catholic school, honestly. But it was something so far outside of myself, right? That to be feared and that I could never obtain. And that was not human and not of this earth. And so when I came to the yoga practice and I was in I'm sure you've probably heard of Bill Mahoney. So Bill Mahoney was doing a workshop at Long Wave and he said, to feel love is to experience God. Therefore, God is love. Yes. And my mind was like, whoa, holy shit. Yes. Like, it's not outside of me because I do love, like, I love my boyfriend and I love my family, my friends and my dog. And so to experience that is to experience the whole power of the universe or God or whatever you want to call it.
Well, I just love, love, love. I just love, love, love. Well, I just love, 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 love.
Best podcast episode ever.
That's actually my mantra for the last, I think it popped into my head at a festival last year and it just keeps going around. This little tidbit of a song, never been recorded, but I return to that. Whether it's a mantra in Sanskrit or it's a mantra in English, what is the language of the heart?
That's actually
the question.
What I was just about to ask you is, do you lean more towards Sanskrit mantra or English mantra? I'm
in a transformation right now. I did fall into the mantra music as my primary practice and also my performance in the last, which is kind of an oxymoron because there's not a performance in this Bhakti Yoga music, but then I'm at these big festivals and at these churches where I'm put on stage, but I'm singing this music that's inclusive with the audience. So it's this, interesting.
I feel that way about teaching yoga sometimes because there is a level performance to it. Even if it's just like, I don't feel good that day. I can't go in and be like, inhale, reach your arms high. God is love.
Yeah. Yeah. But actually my experience with teaching lullaby yoga, which was my little brand of yoga that I coined when I was healing from that accident, it's all about, I am teaching what I need. And so when I teach one of those asana practices with the mantra music and this vibrational sound that shifts my nervous system as I sing these sacred mantras, I end that class feeling 150% better. Whether I just drove, 10 hours to get to my event from the day before or not, I find that there's this sense of balance that comes from reminding myself of my true nature through tuning in with spirit or capital S self or God or whatever we're calling it in that moment. When we're tuned in to universal consciousness, all of our self falls away. And we are spirit.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It does. These are the concepts for me sometimes that for a moment I'm like, yeah, it makes sense. I'm like, wait, what?
Right. No, it's like it seems when words seem like meaningless sometimes when it's this profound notion.
Yeah.
Like, how could we possibly explain that feeling of just total surrender?
Yeah, and I also think that for me, the understanding of this is fleeting. It's these moments.
Well, and then there's the moment that I'm teaching a class and I'm knocking over my thing and doing the thing. And
we had a little mishap before recording with the glass bottle and coffee.
Yeah,
and
we're human, we're fallible. But and I don't want to be on a pedestal. That's another piece.
So important.
I do not want someone to see me on stage at a festival and be like, oh, there's the goddess. Because that's not Sat. That's not truth.
Right. That's right.
That's not my truth.
I always get a little weirded out around guru stuff.
Yes.
It does not speak to me. I guess for some people it does at some level, and I'm sure it's what they need.
Right.
But for me, it's never felt right. I've always been
surrendering control to an external.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And always.
But when I think of that guru, like when I think of my dog.
Yeah.
God backwards. Dog.
Yeah. Right.
I see, gu, dark, ru, light. My dog is transforming that darkness into light in my own heart, in our connection.
Right.
When she looks at me with those pure eyes, needing nothing from me, just wagging her tail and knowing that she is pure love.
Right.
And that I too am pure love when I look at her.
And
the pure love that I feel for her is not tainted by any story like in my human relationships sometimes, because I am human.
Sure. And for those of you listening, there's a pretty broad audience who listens to Dharma Drops.
Pretty deep.
Well, and the podcast was done on this notion that there's a lot of different ways to practice yoga because it meets us where we are. So some people might be like, guru, what the hell are you talking about? A guru is a remover of darkness.
Yes.
So sometimes people refer to it as a teacher, which is like not really how it's defined. Right. It's a remover of darkness. So that means the guru can be anything that lifts that veil and reveals the inner light.
Yeah. So if that's I just love, do it. If it's Om Shanti, do that.
Right.
What is your devotion? And that's really what I do. I do these Free Your Soul's Voice workshops and play shops.
Ooh, okay. Tell me more about that.
So I call them play shops because it's all about unpacking our preconceived notions about our voices. Because even I'm saying even I because people project that I'm some great singer. I have a lot of wounding around my voice. And I was terrified to sing when I was a kid. I threw up on the girl in front of me in my choir thing at 4, I was like, I had to do this. My mom came out clapping when I come home singing from the bus when I'm like 7, and I didn't know I had an audience. I hide under the table. These are human reactions to being seen and heard.
Yeah.
Our voices are more vulnerable than looking into each other's eyes.
Yes. And I don't necessarily think men are removed from this, but I think for women, this is a big deal to be heard. I've known so many women who literally speak like this very quiet because they're afraid of being heard.
Yeah. Or that little girl voice where you know that someone's really hurt.
Yeah. So many. Or even things, I talk about this all the time. I witness this endlessly in meetings at UNC Wilmington where women, before they speak up, apologize. I'm sorry, but... Right. I'm sorry. I don't want to create a stink, or I don't want to stir the pot, but...
Sorry, not sorry.
Right. And so I see this all the time with women just afraid to hear the very things they have to say and to let other people hear them.
Yes. Yeah. And I actually did that. I did a Free Your Soul's Voice play shop in the Midwest when I got off the plane on this tour, actually. And it was interesting because I'd just done one in New York, and that was great, and people really, they're a little bit more extroverted there, right?
Sure.
And then less than a month later, I'm at a similar church, doing a play shop. No, this was a yoga studio, I apologize, which is a different crowd.
Sure.
But what I noticed is the energy was really restricted. Like, there was a woman in Shavasana just like with her shoulders forward and just really clenched. in this practice of closing our eyes and singing, but she was doing it.
So amazing.
You know, and so I'm like, every time that I work, and you said men, women, I actually have more male private clients than I do women.
Interesting.
Because men, I think, are more afraid to be heard in public singing. And so that's a more private thing. Sure. If they want to learn, want to learn how to do it first, or like unlearn whatever it is that's keeping them stuck, and do it right, and then come out with it. You know,
I think anytime.
And then with women, it's more like, oh, there's all of this silence thing that we're unpacking. So I'm trained in the work of Byron Katie. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's a process of unpacking our thoughts that are creating suffering. So if I'm mad at you because you lied to me, how did you know? There's a whole process of 4 questions and a turnaround. Is it true? Is it absolutely true? How would you react when you think that thought? And who would you be without that thought?
Oh,
and then
that's interesting.
You turn the thought around.
So wait, what are the 4 questions again?
Is it true?
Is it true?
Is it absolutely true?
Is it absolutely true? That's really important, because the first inclination is usually yes. And then, is it actually absolutely true?
Yeah. And then how do you react when you think that thought? Where does it hit you in your body? How do you live your life? How do you treat others? How do you treat yourself? Those are the sub-questions under that.
Yeah.
How do you react?
Yeah.
Right?
Those are always the hard
observation.
Ones. That's the hard one for me, the observation. I did EMDR therapy.
I just did that this last winter.
Did you? Yeah.
It's really powerful.
It is really powerful, and it actually helped me a lot. But when they stop and ask things like, where do you feel this in your body? For years, I was like, I don't. But now I can answer that question very easily. Through my yoga practice. I've learned a lot.
Right. Yeah. So it's mindfulness. And then you turn the thought around.
Right.
So what is the opposite of that? Oh, sorry. Who would you be without that thought? So then, without the thought, let's say without the thought that I cannot sing. I'm not a singer. Well, I'd be singing. It's pretty simple, but there's a whole process that we go through that unpacks these stories that have led us to believe this false thought that's causing suffering. So I kind of weave that in a little bit. It's not the primary meat of it, but it's so helpful.
I find often that when I get to the root of things, when I start changing thoughts or moving toward deeper inquiry, the answers are actually rather simple. It's all the shit that's been sitting on top of it that's complicated, right?
Exactly. And there's usually an essence that's so simple if we can just, but then the words of like noticing that and then having that be action is different.
Right.
But yeah, I love that you brought this about female voices specifically. I have a degree in women's studies. I think we may share some views on women coming together. That's the only thing that we really knew about each other coming into this.
I know. It's always a gamble when I record with someone. I'm like, what if we don't like each other?
Right. I think we're doing okay so far.
I think so
too. So I also founded a thing called Shakti United, and it's all about empowering the female voice and finding the song. And I benefit girls in Nepal's education through an organization called Matrada Nepal Foundation. And they're doing great work with trauma therapy, talking about EMDR trauma therapy is what you were talking about. So they're doing this for these kids and their families in Nepal and putting them in boarding schools. And so it feels so good for me to give back, because I'm going to bring up another sore spot in this yoga world: appropriation.
Right. Yep.
I'm a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman who's a yoga practitioner and who's singing these sacred chants from India.
I think about this a lot.
Reciprocity. How do I give back there?
Yep. I think about this a lot, too, because I am also a white woman with blonde hair and green eyes.
Close enough.
Close enough. And it's a sensitive subject, and I always just try to stay as close to the teachings as I can.
Yes.
In my yoga classes, maybe on my podcast it doesn't seem that way, because these are sort of candid conversations. But when it comes down to the heart of practicing and teaching yoga, really honoring the teachings.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then for me, actually, the reason that I'm giving back in the way that I do is because I grew up singing gospel music and not being in a gospel church necessarily, but this black man came to my town and came with all of these teachings. So, another appropriation moment happened in my teen years. Around the same time I was introduced to Bhakti yoga. So all of these things come into my package. So when I'm singing kirtan, which is the Bhakti yoga practice of devotional singing, I'm singing it in a soulful amen. We go there. And so there is this piece of fusion, and we are in the West. And for me, that's the most powerful and profound, authentic practice of Bhakti yoga, because that's what my voice resonates with, is that longing for God.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I'm not staying close to their traditional teachings in Bhakti Yoga necessarily, but I'm staying close to my authentic, true voice and nature and song, and that's what people respond to.
I think, you know, I was teaching a 200-hour teacher training last season, and we talked a lot about Shraddha, that ultimate, like the heart's desire, you know, and when you're really tuned in to the heart's desire, that is your truth, and that is the authentic teaching. It is.
Yes,
it's the authentic teaching when you are in touch with your heart's desire, but if the heart's desire is in the right place.
Exactly.
You know,
is it in all of these things,
right?
You know, grasping.
Because it's kind of interesting because they talk about in, I can't remember what the copy I have is, the translation. I'll put it in the show notes because I can't think of it right now, which is like a standard practice on Dharma Drops. I can never remember my books on Dharma Drops ever. But they talk about not right and wrong as in good and bad, but like right Shraddha, like true, the heart's desire that will serve, or the wrong Shraddha, the heart's desire that does not serve.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And so focusing on those pieces that do serve.
Yeah.
And that's the practice in this human life, and figuring, you know, Ram Dass says one thing, we're all just walking each other home.
Oh, yep.
And I just keep returning to that every day as I meet you, as I meet all of these different humans who are having this human experience in a spiritual life. Mm-hmm. We're all just walking each other home, and we can't separate the teacher from the thing. Mm-mm. But we can have understanding that this is, you know, a unified path, and that we're all fallible, and we can all use the practices to pull ourselves out of that, and, you know, when our heart goes the other direction.
I think we're also in an interesting time in the West where there's more people than ever who are willing to listen to these conversations.
Which is so profound. A degree in women's studies. Back in the day, we're just like, hey, people, there's something wrong. And everyone's just like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. I'm making lots of money. I'm a man. It's cool.
Women aren't, you know? women don't have as much upper body strength. It's like, just whatever.
A fact. It's just like truth. Right. You know, and so there's a little bit less denial right now because we can't be in denial anymore.
Right.
You know, the reality is there has been inequality with race, with gender. With our children right now, we need to empower them to change the world because we're getting too old.
Right.
Right. Really.
Dharma Drops Podcast is now available on the Podcoin app, and it is the podcast player that pays. Not only can you listen to Dharma Drops, but you can listen to all of your favorite podcasts on Podcoin. Just get the Podcoin app on iPhone or Android. It's free and super easy to use. And you can use the app to then earn Podcoins that you can trade in for gift cards or to donate to charity. And there's pretty sweet gift cards on there like Athleta, Amazon, Starbucks, and more. But even better, you can use all of your Podcoins and then donate to a charity, which is really in the true Dharma Drops spirit. I've been using the Podcoin app to listen to all my favorite podcasts because, hey, I'm listening anyway. I might as well earn something. So get the Podcoin app and use the invite code Dharma Drops. That's DHARMA Drops, and you'll get 300 Podcoins just for signing up if you use my code. Again, that's the code Dharma Drops, and you get 300 Podcoins if you use the code Dharma Drops, DHARMA DROPS, Dharma Drops. Okay, friends, go get you some free stuff.
I'm looking at some of these girls that are singing with their ukuleles these songs of empowerment. I'm like, go girl. Have you seen on YouTube?
Yeah, right.
Like, whoa.
Yeah.
These kids are waking up.
Yes. They're of a different world, for sure.
So you were talking about, am I interested in mantra music right now, or am I interested in mantra in English or in Sanskrit? I'm working on 2 albums. One's gospel-infused mantra music, and that's, you know, honoring what I've been doing for the last 5 years, touring the country in my RV with my little dog and giving up my whole life and my relationships. Yeah. And, you know, you say I'm from Portland, Oregon. I haven't been there for, you know, other than maybe like 2 months a year for the last 5 years.
Oh, really? I didn't realize that
I sold my house there last year. I'm now grounding in my hometown in Oregon because I don't really, you know, this has been my Dharma. Yeah. Everything fell away. That's what happens. Yeah. Dharma drops.
Yes.
You know, like, it dropped. I couldn't say no. There was only yes. Mm-hmm. What was I going to say, though?
This is also the story of my podcast. I'm always like, what was I talking about?
Well, that was a good
English or Sanskrit.
Oh,
yeah.
So I'm working on 2 excuse me.
No, that was me. Sorry.
Okay, so I'm working on 2 albums right now, and I have a GoFundMe going for Spirit Song Soul.
Okay.
And one is called Spirit Mantra Soul, and that's the gospel-infused kirtan album. And the other one is called Spirit Song Soul, and it has inspiring English language tracks. And I have one song called Free to Decide, Breathe that's been bought by Unitarian churches and Unity churches all over the country over years. I'll re-record that, but I have one song that's my Shakti United theme song, that organization that I've founded that brings together females. It's a spiritual Lilith fair, essentially, with healers and musicians and everything. And then men support the production, but women are in the foreground.
Right.
So there's a song on that that's all about empowering our children to change the world. And then I just had a shirt that was made that says, in unity, we are free to return to the mother, take care of one another. United, non-violent, no, we won't be silent. Give and receive, stop and breathe. And so I stop and breathe, I stop and breathe. And it goes on to say sisters and brothers.
So cool.
A change is going to come. Daughters and mothers, a change is going to come. You know, this is the time we're living in.
It's so amazing. I had to do some professional development stuff at UNCW years ago about the millennial generation, and they're really, really interesting because they're the least religiously observant generation since we've been recording religious practices, but they're not like closed off to these things, right? They're really open to it. They're the most diverse generation in human history. You know, they're the most obviously the most tech savvy that's ever lived on this earth. And so they're just like this different thing that's happening, who I don't mean can be, you know, shaped in a particular way by us, but that just have the opportunity for that in ways which we and people before us didn't have.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah. I think it's profound because there's a lot more information.
Yep.
There is a lot less denial. There is a transformation that is available, and people are in a space where they're open to it.
Yes.
And our generation, who I think we're the same age, we don't need to talk about that. Anyway, but
we were born in 1999.
Right. But the people who have had these children, let's just say that we might be the age that could be their parents.
Yeah,
yes. Which is probably, oh my gosh, scary. True. I am not a mother other than to my dog, to be clear. But you know, there is so much opportunity with this next generation because there's no denial. There's no, the Maya is being lifted.
Yeah. I do wonder how technology, I know it can contribute to this in good ways, but then I also wonder too about how their access to technology, what's what I'm looking for? They don't have the same human connection that generations of the past did.
Yes.
You know, and I wonder, in one way, they have all this ability to connect and to, like, get word out and to relate with each other through technology. But then, like, I meet my students face to face, and they don't have this same, it's just this different generation.
Yeah.
They don't have the same human connection.
No, yeah, and I think that that's true, that we've been desensitized as a culture. We're always looking at our cell phones instead of actually having human connection and one-on-one conversations. It's more like, oh, I'm doing an Instagram or a Snapchat or whatever. I don't know what they're doing, but there is a lack of the subtle connection as well. Like, you know, I feel like our body language is changing with technology. We're just, I was at the Korean Day Spa the other day in Georgia, and I was watching these 2 young lovers, maybe 19, staring at their cell phones with their earbuds in next to each other, holding hands.
Aaron and I are guilty of this in the morning. He's on his phone scrolling, I'm on mine, and then I'm like, what are we doing? We've been sitting here for 20 minutes before we have to leave for work and stuff, but we haven't said anything. What are we doing?
Right.
Again, but the yogi's a human too.
Yeah, it's true. And you know, me looking at my phone before I'd practice this morning, you know, this is all the learning. And this is all the mindfulness that we can shift. Yeah. You know, and this next generation, I see some really amazing young women that come to my classes that are just so excited about spirituality and who are not staring at their cell phones. Yeah. Who are changing the paradigm because they see that there's a problem. And I don't know how they woke up like that. Because they were born into cell phones. Sure. I was not born into cell phone. You were not. I mean, I'm not that old, just to be clear. But, you know, like, I got my cell phone in college.
Right. So I teach PED 101 yoga at UNCW, and it's a 2-credit, basically it's a 2-credit gym class, if you will, but they take yoga with me. And on Friday mornings for years now, I've taught a 100-minute class called Yoga Philosophy and Practice. And I usually survey the class in the beginning. Why did you take this class? Oh, I have to have it to graduate. I need 2 credits to graduate. I have to have PED 101. Thought yoga would be easier, And by the end of the semester, not all of them, because this won't speak to everyone, right? But I would venture to say 50% or more say to me, I had no idea, and this has changed my life. Because we go over the sutras, you know, and not in a way that's indoctrinating or anything like that, but like, hey, here's this thought process that's out there that you can consider, or here's how to tap into your breath, or really simple things. Here's how to take a test without having a panic attack. Right. You know, and I had one student email me maybe a semester after she was in my class and said, you know, someone that lived in our apartment building tried to commit suicide and there was a lot of panic, and I want to thank you for teaching us how to breathe. Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing.
That's the what for. I'm always looking for that what for when I'm on the road. I had this moment in Arizona, and it's interesting. It's in Prescott, where my grandparents were when I was a kid.
My family lives in Arizona.
Really? Yeah, so I spent every summer there as a kid, and I went back and on tour, and I did an event, a big kirtan the night before at a yoga studio, and then the yoga teacher was like, okay, we want to do this one-off for the community in the park the next day. And I was like, I can do that. It was one of those service things where I felt really good about that exchange. And I didn't know why. I said yes, but I go there and we do this thing, and it's really beautiful, and my dog's in the RV, and the teacher gets the dog in the middle of the class, and then she's singing Hare Krishna with us. She's like, while we're singing, and and there's this homeless man that's walking around the whole time, and I didn't notice him until around when the dog came out, and then he came up after the practice, and we sang this song called "The Light Inside" that's seems to be a favorite of actually the millennial generation of girls that come, and it's a song to this to the child within, to heal that, and it says, "You're safe, you're whole, you're love without beyond words, you're so powerful." You know, heart open wide, the universe lives inside. Just all of these positive English mantras. And then a mantra about the breath, Pavan Guru. And it's a Kundalini Mantra that I use in that particular chant. So that vibration of that chant, it's said that these chants are in our cellular structure before we're born. And so the vibrations are familiar. Right. And they do shift us, whether or not we know what we're singing. And so we're singing this song during the practice and all of these other songs. And this gentleman comes up after and he says, I don't know what you were doing here, but thank you. Oh, I was going to commit suicide today. Oh, my God. And that's not going to happen. That was my what for that day. Yeah. And there have been so many other moments since then that have kept me on this path, because I know that there are hearts that are being touched. Lexi Hawks, the woman that owns your studio.
Yeah, Long Wave Yoga.
Yeah, she emailed me about 2 months ago and said, I was pregnant listening to your Beyond Love album over and over and over the whole time, and I've had that baby, and is there any way you can come to my studio? I didn't get the message, but Spirit had me at her studio picking up my friend's paycheck. And she said, oh my gosh, you're Johanna Beekman.
Oh my God. That's so weird.
And then she's like, do you think you could play here? I've emailed you. And I said, how about tomorrow morning? Let's do a pop-up. You're teaching, right?
I didn't realize.
So that's how this was orchestrated 2 months ago. I was just visiting my friend Narayani Shakti, great kirtan singer and teacher.
We love her on Dharma Drops.
Noel, right. Yeah. So she's wonderful. And it was the 4th of July, and I was like, I'm just going to have a tour vacation this time and see how it goes. And it orchestrated me meeting you and, this whole experience. We really just never know what Spirit has in store. But when we're in tune, things like that happen.
Yeah. I'm always surprised in life how we do one thing and something else just arrives, right? It's that path that we follow, and it just continues to open new avenues for us of creating connection, of learning, of serving, ways that we never would have imagined in a million years.
And it's not us that's touching these students, just to be clear. It's the practice.
Right.
And it's the mantra. It's the asana. It's these teachings.
Yes.
That have touched us, that are touching these humans that come to receive.
My students sometimes will say things to me like, oh my God, thank you so much for class. Or, you know, I've never felt better. And I'm like, that's yours, right?
Amen.
That was your work.
Yes,
I just
thank you for being there.
I just know how to cue yoga poses.
Exactly.
That's
exactly.
it. You know?
Yeah,
That's
and people personalize things, but really we are our own. We're going to return to that word.
The guru. Yeah.
It's within.
That's what actually, when we were talking about the guru, I was thinking about that because, you know, you were saying if it's a mantra, if you're chanting, if that's what lifts the veil, if that's what reveals the light, it's a reminder that we are the guru.
We are.
That's it.
Right.
We are. There's nothing outside of ourselves that's going to give us what we need, that's going to teach us.
No.
We might meet someone who maybe it's like, oh, I haven't seen that perspective before, but it's the consideration, the work that we put into it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's profound when we really integrate that. And so this is the work. And I'm really grateful that I get to meet people like you every day because I'm doing the work and you're doing the work, or at least we're doing the best that we can.
Some days are better than others.
Hot coffee on my dress this morning, you know?
Yep.
But we're here having a great conversation.
Yeah, for sure. And creating connection with each other and sharing ideas for people to listen to, then put into their own practice.
And they can put it into action in their own way because each human is different. And the way that one human is going to take what we're saying is going to be different than any other human because the practice is different in each human.
Yes. And that might be, I mean, end of show, not this episode, but just that's the end of Dharma Drops because that's the whole point of this show, right? Is that we get to experience this in our own unique ways. And the moment we go out there and say things like, oh, they're not practicing yoga right. They don't understand it the right way.
Right. We're not in our yoga then.
That's right. And, you know, and unfortunately, I do hear a little bit of this in the yoga community sometimes that there's a right or a wrong way to live these teachings. We're all just here to figure it out for our lives.
Amen.
That's
Amen.
So I tell my students at UNCW, I said, this is a spiritual practice that supports whatever you believe in, even if you believe in nothing.
Amen. You know, and I've been listening to the Christian radio stations. Like,
there's a lot here.
I've been like, okay, I'm in Georgia. I wonder where it is. It's still K-Love. Cool. And I'm just listening to the words on all of these songs and realizing that it's all one language and music is a universal language and we're all singing the same thing. You know?
It's really...
Whether it's Bhakti yoga or Christian music, if it's uplifting and it's a heart song, let's do it. Because it does transform a lot.
Yes.
Whether we're listening or singing.
I was watching this just short excerpt of a documentary on Netflix about the Shaolin monks. And it was really interesting because in maybe a parallel conversation to what we're having now, they were talking about all the practices that these monks go through to then be accepted into this life of monkdom. I don't know what you want to call it, you know, but it's the exact same conversation that we're having right now. And even the diagrams that they use to talk about the flow of energy in the body, it's the exact same conversation.
Amen. Yeah, exactly. And there are so many parallels throughout all religions, really, and spiritual practices. And the minute that we all realize that there is no separation is the minute that we're going to be free as a world and a society. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see. But I think that there's a little bit of waking up that's happening. It's the end of the Kali Yuga, supposedly. Yeah. That's the name of it. I was trying to think of this. Right. When we first started recording. Kali Yuga. Yeah. It's this time of just total chaos and darkness and transformation that will... Theoretically, it's the end, and then we're receiving the light again. Yeah. And so what I'm seeing right now, and whether we're talking about Christianity also, there's this, you know, oh, the world's going to end, and then there's, you know, there's always this rapture or whatever, you know, this piece of that. Okay, so let's believe that it's the light now. Let's believe we're waking up. Right. That's manifestation. Let's make action. Right. Skill in action. Skill in action. That's what it's all about. Skill in action. Right. I am always bringing this up in blog posts, on the podcast, and in my classes, that yoga is skill in action. It's not just action, it's skillful. Right. Yeah, because we can make a lot of action and do a lot of damage. Oh, yeah. We can say, we've shown the world that. That's right. We can say, oh, I accept that the light is here. But if you're not skillful in the action with that, then here we go back into the dark. Exactly. And, you know, and I'm not willing to live in the darkness.
Right.
I am not willing to deny the darkness either. And that's something that's happening also, is some people are like,
Big
I'm
time.
going to spiritually bypass my way out of this and not think about it and be happy all the time. No, that's not going to do anything. That's just denial.
Yes. My very first episode of Dharma Drops was called Blinded by the Love and Light. And
Amen.
It was
good.
about the problem of spiritual bypassing, to
Good.
say like, well, I can't have these difficult conversations, or I can't acknowledge these problems in the world because it's just bad energy.
Yeah, good, bad energy. It's just energy.
Right.
No, it's just, I mean, it's not okay with me.
Right.
And there's a lot of, actually, there's this conversation that I just had this morning. The younger generation, you were talking about them being disconnected. Mm-hmm. There's this whole concept of ghosting.
Yeah. Yes.
And I was explaining it to my 64-year-old friend. I'm like, there's actually a word for this thing that kids are doing. And it's just like, okay, I'm just not going to talk to you. And that's communication.
Right.
That's not communication.
Not at all.
Not in my generation. Mm-mm. So what are we going to actually, action, communication, integrity, transparency?
Mm-hmm. Saying the things you want to say that you don't really want to, but need to be said.
Right. It's hard, so I'm not going to do it.
Right. Or it makes me feel negative. I'm all love and light. If I have that conversation, it's going to be really negative. That's part of getting rid of the layers, right? Of getting rid of the
it's
shit.
It's going to make it more negative if you don't have that conversation.
You have to work through the muck.
Right. Mm-hmm. No mud, no lotus.
I just said that to my UNCW class the other day.
That's a high five. Right. I'm actually a Scorpio in astrology also, and there's this concept of like darkness and light and just like embracing it all, and it's this kind of Kali energy if we're talking about the deities of Bhakti Yoga. When we're singing these chants, we're singing to the energies of these quote-unquote deities, which I believe not to be outside of ourselves or external, but we have as humans to have like we do for the white bearded god, like an image of what God looks like for all of these different deities. But like there's different deities like Kali, who is
my favorite.
Right. So she's this dark goddess and she's got all this
fierce as a motherfucker.
Right, right. And she doesn't take shit, and we got an explicit language, so it's okay to say that, right?
Oh yeah, you can say fuck as much as you want.
Fuck. So, there's that, like that's part of it. People. Kali is a part of it. But there's also, Lakshmi, and she's spring, and she's love, and she's light, and she's abundance, and all of these things.
But these fierce goddesses and gods, they're also the protector, right?
Exactly.
And so they destroy and they kill and they do what needs to be done in the effort to create goodness in the world.
And to reveal the truth.
Right.
And create space for new creation.
Right.
And so if we're denying that darkness, we aren't making room for new creation.
That's
we're
right.
denying the world transformation.
That's right. I keep a picture. Well, my boyfriend Aaron knocked it down and broke the frame, but there's a picture of Kali Ma that hangs in my bedroom.
And your boyfriend broke it down and
He actually really likes Kali Ma because he's
that's a Kali energy around.
I know. Well, it kept falling, and then finally one day it just broke. So I don't know. I mean,
I guess it's time the transformation's complete.
Yeah, that's right.
Great.
Or she needs a new frame.
Or she just needs a new frame. Or maybe she's just too strong. She doesn't even need a frame.
Yeah, actually, speaking of Noelle, one time we were in the bathroom at Long Wave Yoga, and we were joking about what my name would be if I changed it, and I said it would be Kali. And she was like, can you imagine if you're like, my name is Kali Ma?
Well, but you know what? That's what I'm kind of saying, is that they are energies that are within us.
Yeah.
And sometimes I need Kali to, like, sever the thing. Mm-hmm. Or, like, these kids that are ghosting. Have some Kali about it and, like, fork your tongue and say the truth, man.
Right.
Yeah,
it bums me out. I mean, I know sometimes it is hard to speak your truth, even if it's not, like, deep, profound spiritual truth. Just like, hey, I don't think we are a good couple or a good match, I know that stuff is hard, but it feels so much better to just say it.
Right, and it creates clarity and it creates freedom for everyone, and that's where the suffering ends, when there's clarity.
Right.
This whole Maya word, illusion, is the problem. That's the key to all of what we're talking about, is there's this Maya, or this illusion, this veil, that we're all kind of like barely able to see through, and we're kind of fumbling, and and then we're hitting each other along the way because it's just so confusing because it's this darkness and we're just kind of feeling around and like, whoops, I didn't mean to grab your boob, but I'm just like, you know what I mean? We're just blind leading the blind so much of the time when we aren't in the practice.
Right.
And so I'm yelling into the microphone.
That's okay. It's here to be yelled into.
I'm very excited about this. It is the time for us to wake up and embody the practice, whatever that looks like for each human, which, like we talked about earlier, is going to be different.
Yes.
Me embodying my practice as this person who's exciting and talk this loud and, this Vata energy. Vata is like wind in Ayurveda, which is the medicine of India, needs a little bit of earth element, right?
Right.
So I teach restorative yoga with live music, and that is perfect balance for my nervous system, and that's what I practice at home, is these subtle body and breath work practices that bring me in.
And for me, I have a little kapha in my body, especially this time of year, so I can get a little sluggish and slow. And so even though I don't feel like it, the last few mornings I've been waking up and doing a really vigorous, sweaty, difficult practice.
It's amazing.
I have a harmonium at home, and I found that, I'm probably not going to be a kirtan artist. I've never led a kirtan, probably won't. But I feel really good after my practice. I chant, and that's what works for me. But other people are like, I can't do that chanting stuff. And that's okay.
That's okay. Find the limb of yoga that does work. There are 8 limbs. Yep. There are a lot of ways you can go here. That's what I love about yoga. There's something for every body and every mind as well, Yeah. You don't even have to practice physical yoga to be a yogi.
I was just about to say that because I did a workshop with Manorma, who teaches Sanskrit, but she's a really good example of someone who, she is a yogi, but she's not an asana yogi. She's jnana yogi. She's the yoga of knowledge. Right. So she studies scripture. So she studies scripture and all sorts of stuff, know, but she's not an asana yogi.
No, and it's a powerful practice to be in that. That's a beautiful space, but that's not necessarily me.
Right.
I'm much more embodied and invoke, there's a lot of different, so it's powerful when we start to really tune into our inner worlds and realize what practices work. Yeah. I started out as a power yogi.
Right. I think
my Vata Pitta loved that.
I think a lot of people start out as power yogis because they want to work out.
Right, and we're in this very Pitta society. Pitta is the fire energy of Ayurveda. I don't know if you've talked about this in this podcast, but in this society, there's this like CEO, go get done, end goal. Like there's always an end prize, and it's not the journey, it's the destination for sure. And so power yoga would be like what that fire energy would gravitate towards.
Yeah.
But you don't add fire to fire. That makes an
more
explosion.
Fire. Like increases like.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do we balance that? That might be more subtle body and breath work, like lullaby yoga, or, and then like you said, if you're in a more kapha element, you really need to wake up and do that fiery practice. That's powerful for the right nervous system who needs it.
And I also think it's important for people to recognize too when these things change, right? I don't always feel kapha. It's a very particular time of year that I feel this way. Exactly. And then like when the humidity starts to die down here and stuff, I actually feel a lot better, a lot more energized. Yeah. I don't feel like I have to... When I say practice vigorously, it's not really power yoga. It's more just like...
No, but you're doing...
an intense practice. Right. It's not restorative yoga.
Right. No, you're up off the ground. You're moving. You're doing a more long hold of a powerful, warrior, whatever you're doing.
Yep. And I feel better, but then it doesn't feel good for me later in the year when I don't feel so calm anymore.
Well, and I think that's what I was talking about. We were talking before this podcast when we were getting some coffee. I talked about solar energy and sun and how much I love the sun. But I'm also, that's not necessarily good for me. Like, I've been on the road, like I said, there's a lot of wind energy driving around the country in an RV. Yeah. So I've been adding some wind to my wind element, right? And so actually this is the first year that I just decided, no, I'm not driving around the country. I'm grounding in Oregon where it rains and has seasons, and I'm not in the desert at all festivals all year round, because I have to balance myself and fill my well so I can give.
I was going to say, that's a lot of giving. Right. It's a whole lot of giving.
It is, yeah. And we all need balance. And yogis, it's all about balance. So to be a true yogi, I need to at some point say, hey, I'm receiving now.
Yeah.
I'm filling this well because we can't fill anyone else's well if ours is empty.
That's right.
It's
hard though. I was just talking about this with someone the other day. The moment you become a yoga teacher or you become a kirtan artist, for me, at least for me, that was the moment that it was just so hard to fit my own work in, own practice, so hard.
And it can be really hard with all of this. I have to be here doing this thing, and then why do I want to do this thing when I'm not doing the thing for the thing, and I have to do the thing so many times every day for the other people, but what about my thing? Not to say things so much, I got a little less descriptive, but sometimes that's all you gotta say. It's just like, oh my God, enough of the thing.
Right.
And so that's what and I also went on and did advanced trainings during this touring just to keep myself and my practice alive, filling the well here and there, but it's time again. It's been a couple of years.
That's a long time.
Right.
A few years. That's a long time.
A few years since I did more so and I do constantly fill my well on the road because I'm very fortunate to have a lot of famous yoga teacher friends,
Sure.
And so I get to have these powerful conversations where we are improving our practice just by philosophizing together.
That's what I love so much about hosting Dharma Drops Podcast is that I've learned so much in the last 6 months of having people from all over the world on the show and just talking about the ways in which they're practicing yoga and teaching yoga or even other things, just how they're nourishing themselves or practicing mindfulness. It's been amazing.
Well, we're all gurus for ourselves and then we can be for each other.
Yeah.
But we need to fill our wells first.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's what the yoga is waking up and before going outside, putting your teeth along your, your tongue along your teeth.
Right.
And noticing what your skin feels like before you get out of bed. And, just those subtle pieces of attending to this vessel we've been given, which it really just is. It's this vessel.
Yeah.
And we need to wake up to that we're in it every day.
That's always going back to fleeting things. That concept that we are a vessel, that's one of those things intellectually understand. And I have these fleeting moments sometimes where oh, I don't understand. I know.
Right.
And then suddenly that's that deep awareness is gone.
Yeah.
And it's back to just the intellectual understanding of it. And then again, a month later, I'm oh yeah, there it is again. Right. It's so interesting.
Well, and that's what this life is for. It's just remembering and remembering and remembering our true selves.
Right. That's saying nature. Yoga is remembrance of who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm remembering more of who I am every day if I'm fortunate enough to be doing the practice.
Yeah.
And those days where I don't feel like the practice is really available to me still happen.
Yeah.
And I learn from those too.
Yeah.
Because I'm a yogi.
Right.
And
we can
that takes a lot to be able to say that.
Yeah.
Also to say, hey, I've reached the place where I can say that that's my practice.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot.
Yeah.
Yoga is only one word, but it's way beyond that.
Way beyond. It's a tremendous amount of work.
It really is.
It's a tremendous amount of work and play and study and practice and all sorts and everything in between.
And it's lifetimes if you really want to go into it. Lifetimes. That's why it's so intriguing.
Yeah.
Is there really is something for everyone and you could spend your whole life going into one limb and not get all the way through.
I like how, you said you can go into one limb and not get all the way through, but I like how they say you can pick one sutra or you can pick one teaching and let that be your work this entire life.
Yes.
And that's enough.
Yeah.
You devote your practice to that one thing and that's enough.
That's it. That's it. And that's the other piece in this culture that we forget. It's oh yeah, we can do everything. No. There is something called monotasking. One task, not multi.
God,
what would it be like if we just had one thing?
That's a tough one in our culture for sure. And I'm the master of taking on too many things and thinking too many ideas and saying yes to everything.
Right. Yeah, but sometimes a no is a yes to yourself.
Oh my God, I was just talking about this the other day. I was having coffee with a colleague and she was saying how she's just had too much to do and she's feeling really worn out. And I had mentioned the... what is her name? Chandra Rhimes. Is that her name? She wrote, what's that TV show called? How to Get Away with Murder. She wrote the book, The Year of Yes.
Okay.
And in that book, she talks about how saying no is another way of saying yes.
Yeah.
By saying no to these 500 other things, you're saying yes to monotasking.
Oh, absolutely.
By saying no to every spiritual practice ever known to man, you're saying yes to the one that works for you.
Right, exactly. And it's those choices. And it's being really conscientious about those choices, that when we're saying yes to one thing, we are saying no to something else.
Yeah.
And man, being on the road for this long, I've learned a lot about that. It's like I could keep saying yes and be out all winter this winter again, and it'd be great and it would feed, but would it feed me at this point?
Right.
And that's the yoga, is self-care, honestly.
Yeah.
And learning when it's time to really fill the well and be in balance enough to know that, hey, I'm in this taking on too much realm right now because I have a lot of wind energy or whatever it is that, you're in your kapha element because of the time of year. It's the time of year that kind of aggravates mine, so I need to go within.
Right.
Yeah. So, mindfulness. I think that's all I have to say about all of that. And it is, and it is a practice.
Yeah.
And I'm human. Like, every day is just a little bit of waking up.
Yeah. And that's an important part too. It's just a little bit. It's incremental.
Right. Being gentle and compassionate with ourselves, that it's a process. Like, I love myself in this little human moment
she's like
having.
touching her arms, like, I just love myself.
No, that's part of my practice. Yeah. Is just total self-compassion, because if we don't have that for ourselves, how could we possibly have that for another person?
And I think our culture doesn't have a ton of it collectively. Yeah. We don't have a ton of self-compassion.
No, it's like, oh, you messed up. No, you're
sorry, I'm knocking stuff over in here.
Right. But you know what? Very good. Very good. Very good. Yay! That's what I do in my play shops when someone judges themselves. It's like, no, it's fun. One of my teachers taught me that it's a laughter yoga thing. But it's like, let's find the lila, the play in that moment, that we could find self-judgment, and where do we find the joy there? And how can we let that go and have compassion and see that as an opportunity for growth?
Right.
Rather than I knocked shit over. Which I had a whole judgment when I had that whole hubbub in the coffee shop before we got here. Like, I'm like covered in coffee. There's like honey on the floor.
There's glass everywhere.
I'm like, this is actually kind of funny right now, and no one is angry. They're all
everyone was really bummed. Like, you broke
everyone in the whole place went, oh. Everyone else was having compassion for me. Why couldn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when I landed on compassion, it was pretty funny.
Yeah.
And now we're here, and I got a new cup of coffee, and you bought it for me. Yeah. So that was great. Like, what's wrong with this picture?
I think everything worked out really well.
Yeah, we've had a great conversation. I'm super caffeinated. It's great.
And you're going to run home.
Like, Noelle, sorry, I'm already outside of your door.
Yeah.
You don't need to pick me up.
I ran 5 miles, and I'm feeling amazing.
Exactly. Well, thank you for sharing this time with me,
of course.
sister.
So let me ask you, if folks want to find out more about you, listen to your music, you said you had a GoFundMe for an album. How can we learn more about you?
JohannaSings.com.
Okay.
JohannaSings.com. And then I have a GoFundMe. I think it's GoFundMe spirit song soul.
And then for those of you listening, those links will be in the show notes, so you can go right into the show notes and click on them too.
Yeah, there's a really fun video in the GoFundMe actually that I put together that's got videos from all over the country and festivals and churches, and then new music from the English Mantra album that you can actually listen to.
Awesome.
And then me singing with lots of amazing artists, or them singing with me. Just kind of enjoyed that. And there's the Shakti United theme song, and it talks a little bit about that initiative as well.
Awesome.
So can't wait to hear from
all
you guys.
that will be in the show notes. You can click on that. I said click on that. Last thing before we go, the way I always like to end the podcast is, I am a firm believer that all this is super important, but there's a big world of just amazing things out there that aren't always related to yoga.
Yes.
Are you doing anything right now that's just really fun and exciting? Like listening to any podcast, going on some vacation. What's happening in your world right now that you are excited about?
That I'm excited that's not yoga.
Yeah.
I'm going to go home to Oregon to the rain and be a normal human for like a few months.
Yeah, you're gonna drink good coffee.
What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go hiking every day in the woods and in the meadow, which are very like walking distance for me, which was a choice to have, to have open space. I am going to drink good coffee.
Yeah.
I am going to have good conversations, and I'm going to go to ecstatic dance, which is one of my other favorite things. And I'll probably play a little bit of music for fun with my friends.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I'm super fired up about that.
I saw a picture of Multnomah Falls the other day that someone posted, and I had this moment of nostalgia because it's been a really long time since I've been to Multnomah Falls and seeing stuff that big and beautiful. Because, I mean, this is like the flattest place on earth.
That's what I was talking with Noelle about. I was like, let's go hiking today. And she's like, there's
nowhere.
And I was like, okay, so I'm going to do that in Oregon, and I'm stoked because there's no hiking here. I'm going to go to the ocean today.
Oh, good.
Yes, that's my favorite thing right now in this now.
Yes.
We're really close.
We're super close to the ocean.
And the sun just came out.
Yes, it's probably hot as hell out there.
I'm about to get me hot.
When Annie Carpenter was here doing her workshop, she lives in California, and she asked everyone here, she said, are any of you rock climbers? And the whole studio just got really quiet. And someone was like, we don't have any rocks. Because there's nothing, it's just flat.
That's so hilarious.
I know.
Oh, man.
Oh, well, I'm excited for your venture back to Oregon.
I am
Say
as well.
hello to not my home state, but a state that I lived in and loved living in. I miss living on the West Coast.
Yeah. Well, I'll say hello and give the Oregon rocks your love.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll send you one, bring you one back.
Yeah. Or like, I don't know, a leaf from a tree.
Oh,
or
yeah,
something.
like real trees with like green on them.
We don't have any trees like that deciduous.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, we don't have any of it.
Well, it's time. I'll bring you something next time I come.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being on the
Rebecca.
show. I really appreciate it. Guys, if you want to catch up with me, you can always find me on Instagram at Rebecca Warfield Yoga and at Dharma Drops Podcast. And all of my shenanigans are on RebeccaWarfield.com and DharmaDropsPodcast.com, but they go to the same place. So either one.
Awesome.
Your choice. All right, guys. Until we meet again next time. Bye.
Be well.
Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of Dharma Drops Podcast. Don't forget to head over to Facebook and join the Dharma Drops community page where we can hang out, share ideas, have fun, and just shoot the shit together. So head over to Facebook, search for Dharma Drops community page, and bada bing, bada boom, you're there. On Instagram, you can find me at Rebecca Warfield Yoga and at Dharma Drops Podcast. And of course, you can always head over to my website, RebeccaWarfield.com and DharmaDropsPodcast.com, and check out all my shenanigans there, including you can register for the Feeding the Wildlife 2-week course on my site. Okay, until we meet again next time. Bye.